piece of big news from Q4 is just the continuing march of Michael Saylor accumulating Bitcoin, both for MicroStrategy, his company, and for himself. I loved the announcement on the quarterly shareholders meeting that Saylor will be selling, was it 5,000 shares of MicroStrategy stock every day until sometime in April to acquire more Bitcoin for his personal stash. So this is just amazing to watch year after year. His conviction is completely steady. It seems to deepen, and he's got almost 200,000 Bitcoin in MicroStrategy. What does this mean? I mean, he's front running every corporation at this point because corporations are going to put Bitcoin on their treasury balance sheets in mass in the next few years, probably. And he's spent the last 2 years front running all of that. What does this mean for the future of U.S. corporations? He's sort of rewriting the book on how to manage a balance sheet in a U.S. corporation. Preston, you want to take this one first?
Yes, I really want to take this question because I think so many people are missing what's happening here. And let me tell you, there's one hell of a story happening here.
Yeah.
Him exercising these stock options and then buying Bitcoin privately with the 5,000 a day till April. That is not even a story to me. The story to me is MicroStrategy. I'm going to use the word debasing their shares outstanding by 25% over the last year. This is a highly dilutive activity for what would appear to be a common stock on the publicly traded markets. But that's not what's happened from a Bitcoin per share basis. I would describe it as being anti-dilutive. So what in the world does all that mean? So when we look at equity all over the world, especially publicly traded equity, it's typically around a PE of 30 to 35 times. Okay. That's the current market rate if you're dealing with billion-dollar enterprise in any type of developed public markets these days. If that valuation is rich and we're moving into a Bitcoin world, what it means is you should be issuing shares and taking those shares and converting it into the new settlement layer. Okay. And the proof in the pudding is the performance of MicroStrategy in how much Bitcoin you hold in a per share basis over the last year. So what Michael Saylor is literally screaming to the world with his actions is not only is my MicroStrategy overvalued at whatever it is, 30 or 35 times earnings or whatever it is today, but so is your equity. And what you should be doing is selling more of this common stock at 30 or 35 times earning and converting it into Bitcoin and sticking it on your treasury. And we've talked about this speculative attack, the Michael Goldstein and Pierre Rochard idea of a speculative attack. And a lot of people were throwing that term around with now MicroStrategy is doing this. But when they initially did it, they were doing it with convertible debt and they were paying like 75 bips for this 5-year duration. It was convertible into common stock. And everybody was like, oh yeah, this is the speculative attack, right? It's done by a publicly traded company. But you want to talk about a speculative attack. It's what he's doing right now by issuing more common stock and creating more shareholder value for shareholders by not even like having to pay interest rate. He's just doing it by issuing more common stock and then converting it into Bitcoin because the PE is grossly mispriced globally all over the planet. So what would be an appropriate PE ratio in a Bitcoin world? Well, I've said this on other shows. If it's 10 or maybe it even goes to 5 or whatever, let's just say it's 10, right? And you're at a 30. That means you need a 30 or a 66% reduction from current equity premiums to manifest itself into this new world, which means you should be a seller of common stock until it gets to those PE ratios if you're denominating your treasury and all your free cash flows into Bitcoin. For the companies that aren't doing that, it even has further the fall. This is a really, really big deal and a really big idea that I think is lost on nearly everybody. Now, we can get into whether this strategy is appropriate and smart when we get into maybe late 2025. I personally would probably adjust the strategy a little bit, like me personally. But for where he's at today, and where we're at in the environmental backdrop of where Bitcoin's at in the 4-year cycle, I think this is not just brilliant, but I think it's genius. And I think he's putting on a freaking clinic for Wall Street, and they're all asleep at the wheel. That's what I think.
History in the making. Michael Saylor will be a king moving forward over the next few decades, and MicroStrategy will be a force to be reckoned with for probably a century or more to come. He's building a megalith. Sam, what's your take on GigaChad?
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead, Preston.
I got one other point because I see a comment
here.
I see a comment here that Saylor knows the stock value is unsustainable. So here's the thing that's so wild about this play. The higher that his company starts to get valued, because people are looking at, let's say it starts getting valued at a PE of 50, he is even more incentivized to do this play even harder. That's what makes it so insane. And that's why I'm saying all of Wall Street is lost on what is happening here.
So as Bitcoin goes up in price, the PE ratio goes up, and the more incentive he has to issue more common stock to buy more Bitcoin.
Bingo.
Wow.
Yes. Wow. Now, where he again, he has to be very careful, because let's say the PE blows out to 75, or I don't even have any clue how high it could go, but let's just say that as an example. Let's say the PE blows out to 75, and we're late 2025. He's going to be highly incentivized to leverage that market premium by issuing more common stock into the market and buying Bitcoin. But he's also going to be potentially doing it at a time where, if we go through another market cycle, that still might be a bad decision, despite how overvalued the company. Well, I'm saying overvalued. Who knows what? But how rich the premium is. And that's going to be a difficult thing to kind of balance psychologically. I know if I was in charge, if I was the CEO or chairman of MicroStrategy, that would be really difficult to manage from a psychological standpoint. But I think he needs, if I was Michael, like I'm giving Michael advice, but if I was Michael, I would lay out my rules today while you don't have that psychological thing kind of playing out in the heat of where I think this bull market's about to rip. So that you just kind of look at what you told yourself back when the emotions weren't flowing, that's what you're going to exercise. And I think it's going to be, I mean, what a case study in financial, like doctorate level financial valuation. Sorry, 100%. Sam.
No, I think that was brilliant. I mean, what he's doing today is going to be written in textbooks. That's what I think. And the fact that he sold, over 1 million shares, technically it dilutes shareholders. And technically, I think there'd be like an uproar about it, but not in this case, because when you look at the Bitcoin per share, it's actually increased after he did that. And I think that's what he's looking at. I think that's what Preston just was talking about. That's why it's anti-dilutive. And I think the people who own MicroStrategy at this point understand this concept, at least to like, they may not understand exactly what Preston just said, but they understand I bought this because they're buying Bitcoin and they're okay with it, because they're like, look at the stock price just keeps going up. And I think that right now, only a handful of corporations led by innovative thinkers like a Michael Saylor, Ross Stevens, they're benefiting from the Bitcoin standard, but it's only a matter of time before other business leaders kind of catch on. And right now, U.S. companies are sitting on a little bit over like around $6 trillion in fiat that are continually going to get debased. And they're going to look at the success of other companies like MicroStrategy and Stone Ridge, and that's going to spur them to consider a Bitcoin standard if they want to remain competitive, because again, they can't protect themselves from other corporations adopting a superior, treasury reserve asset. And I think we're just going to see this play out. The FASB rules helps as well, helps kind of reduce barriers. And I think maybe a lot of people expected it to happen sooner in terms of corporations after MicroStrategy came in. But I think maybe that's what we're going to see this cycle, is we're going to see a lot more corporations come in over the next like 4 years or so.